Are we?
I'm comfortable with that.
I'll call the meeting to order right now. It's 10 o'clock and I'll call the meeting for November 23rd to order. Start with acknowledging the territory that we're holding this meeting on, the traditional territory of the Saanich people. And I'd like to acknowledge that we're doing that with respect. First thing to do, we've got a couple of late items for the agenda. The first one is under 6B. There's a letter from and a recommendation from Central Saanich. And then another one under other business to deal with the parade. So if anybody else has anything else, otherwise looking to approve the agenda. Anybody? Me? Second? Dave, sorry. Everybody, all agreed to approve? Okay, approval of minutes. Does anybody have any changes, adjustments, or anything for the minutes? Okay, move to approve the minutes.
I'll move.
Word. Second. Rain. Everybody in agreement? Passes. Okay, moves on to number 5, the accessibility plan. All the plans have been approved with the districts. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to read them or listen in on any of them. I think I'm pretty pleased with them. I think, it's obviously a work in process, but reading over all of them, they're pretty similar with little tweaks to each district. But overall, I was quite pleased with them. One of the things that has stood out to me in it is the willing to learn and the educational component, because I think that's a very important part of going forward, is the willingness to learn. And I think it's something we're all going to learn as we go forward to it and find out what works and what doesn't work. So I was pleased. I was pleased with the work that they did. And I'm glad that everybody's on board with moving forward with this. Terry?
Yeah, just one comment I'll make. So when Sidney reviewed ours, I did have some concerns initially about when I looked at the plan that there was no implementation strategy or there was no timelines or priorities set. And but then when I looked at it more carefully, I noted that actually a lot of things that are in the plan for Sidney, at least, are things that are already underway, and many of those things have been brought forward by this committee, like looking at emergency services, the communications, which are communications managers already looking at alternate formats, revising the website, parking, active transportation, washrooms downtown. So those things are being addressed, and my understanding is our plans will be we have all these different kinds of plans, and so will be mechanisms to be reviewing them on an annual basis. So we'll be able to get kind of progress report on that, and then so I think it's good.
Sure, and from Central Saanich, when we had the discussion at council 2 weeks ago, I think it came forward, and again, similar comments and feedback from to Terry's points. And the one item that I did bring up that was not identified under sort of current, and I'm going to use the vernacular maybe incorrectly, but sort of future looking, was the transportation side of things. And so when I brought that forward, staff commented that was, still already a lens that they're using with respect to projects underway. And so certainly this is a 3-year plan, and this is the first year into it, I'm heading into the 2nd year of it. I think we do still have lots to learn from this perspective, but to your point, Chair, that this is an education component as well, and this is the first step. So I do believe that staff, when they're looking at projects from whatever perspective that might be, that the accessibility lens is already being applied, as well as the climate leadership and adaptation component to it. So I'm happy to see how this is coming forward and the reporting mechanism coming back annually and again, where we're at in 3 years' time again, when this is to be reviewed by the province, mandated by the province to do that. We'll see where we can make improvements continually on that. So yes, that's it from Central Saanich's perspective.
Just a comment on that, and a question maybe as well. The three jurisdictions, since there's a lot of similarity amongst the three, which you would suspect, it seems that there would be a real synergy, and the three working together on those ones that are common would have more of an impact, more of a cohesive effect, and specifically in those that require government or other jurisdictions to approve and fund potentially the solutions. And I'm wondering if that's in place and how that would be undertaken, if at all.
Sure, I would say that this committee has really strengthened the relationships and the communication between the three municipalities. I think that, you know, certainly they work together in the past on infrastructure projects and other larger, higher level that would affect the peninsula as a region. But I would say that the communication that's happening between the three, you know, sort of municipal halls has been maybe reignited. So that I would feel confident that if there are larger projects that are done, and whether it's, you know, again with Panorama as well as the partner, that communication is happening.
And I guess I would maybe look to staff for their thoughts on this, but because I do recall we're having some discussion at council about whether council needed to provide direction to staff to collaborate on certain things, like, you know, say if it was parking, that let's, instead of everybody looking at how to address accessible parking, that, you know, they kind of all look at it together. Other sort of, you know, we talked about playgrounds, other things. So my assumption is that they would kind of work together, but maybe I'll ask staff if that's their understanding as well.
Which staff would you like?
Mighty mo.
Yeah.
Any staff.
I guess I would say that, I mean, we're always looking for opportunities to collaborate, but quite often it's just, you know, different projects are happening at different times, but, you know, quite often you'll see sort of like interests align at a certain point, and there'll be staff resources to do that. And we kind of jump on those opportunities. I think the accessibility plans were one of them. More recently, the OCP stuff, where we all work together. So yeah, those are sort of ongoing, and I think staff are attuned to when those opportunities show themselves. We jump.
And speaking from my side of things, from a regulatory standpoint, when bylaws are updated, I can assure you that staff are looking at our neighbors and what standards they're using. So from an accessibility parking standpoint, Sidney's already done some great work looking at your bylaws. We have some zoning changes that zoning bylaw updates that we will be doing within the next year. Well, I have to do it anyway, but next year by June for other reasons. So, but looking at some of those changes, we'll be looking to try to generate some alignment, like where it's feasible. Those things are on the table for sure. So trying to create some cohesiveness.
Yeah, I would just contribute to say that we'll often, you know, I think the parks master plans, there's 2 going on right now. So there's some shared, collaboration going on there. But I think we're always connected with our equivalents in the other municipalities. So, you know, if we're creating an event checklist or we find a really good one, we'll share it with our comms partners, or, you know, any area where we can collaborate. I know the corporate officers talk on a regular basis, the comms managers do, the planners do. So if anyone has a great idea, we're not ashamed to share it. We're not ashamed to steal it. And
in my line of work, we call that R&D. Rip off and duplicate.
I like that.
Can I just say, David, if you want to speak up, you're really tiny on the screen and I don't want to miss you. So just interrupt me if you need to.
Absolutely. Thank you, Charlene.
Okay. Did you have anything you wanted to say about the accessibility plan, David?
Well, just that it's great to see all three of our local governments having got it done. I think they're the first three plans in the Capital Regional District. I don't think Victoria's old accessibility framework counts as a plan under the new act. So kudos to everyone on the team, staff, council, and committee members. Job very well done. As far as I can tell, we're now fully compliant with the act, and one of the few prescribed organizations that actually are. So well done.
I have to agree too, and I do notice, like I say, I do notice the difference. I've watched in on a couple of different council meetings and stuff, and I'm seeing other people talking about accessibility that maybe otherwise hadn't, and so I think it is starting to become more of a lens that people are looking at things, and in my mind, that's what I want to see. That's, you know, are we going to get everything perfect all the time? Probably not, but at least we're working towards it. So I think everybody here should be proud of themselves. Does anybody else want to say anything about the accessibility plan, or good? This is quite a good one. Okay, council referrals. The first one is on the Brethour Park improvements and playground design. So I think we've got a few things we want to be able to talk about with that. I don't know if everybody had a chance to take a look at the pictures and the park design that came in. My concern is with it is that I'm not seeing anywhere that park is going to be accessible to me or somebody else in a wheelchair. I'm not sure if I'm missing on the design. I see there's a concrete pathway around where the edge of it is on the road there, but then it says gravel pathways, which then doesn't allow me, and then it doesn't look like there is actual wheelchair access to any of the you know, the picnic tables. Yeah, I just didn't see much in the way of accessibility features in any of these pictures. Like there was nothing that it looked like I could access, or somebody in wheelchair. Yeah, Jen.
Sorry, did you want me to give a bit of an intro?
That would be great.
Sure. Okay. I'm Jen Clary. I'm the Director of Engineering at the town of Sidney. I know I've worked with several of you on different occasions, but yeah. So really, this item was spurred because we have gone to tender for the Brethour Park playground designs. We do have a parks concept plan for Brethour Park, so that's what the general layout was built around. There's one change from the concept plans is that it originally called for pickleball courts. However, we've heard since then that the community has, you know, has significant concerns with having pickleball courts so close to residents. So now it's being called a multi-sport court with pickleball lines included on it. So before, we'd like to hear comments on both the park improvement plan, which again is based largely on the park concept plan for the park. It includes some parking improvements, some additional trails. There's currently, right now, there's old dugouts, old baseball diamond dugouts in the park, and there's not really anything else there. The parking area is very small, and it's a bit dangerous for people to get in and out of, especially if we are encouraging more use of the park. So it is going to be broken into two phases. So that the concept plan you have is for the final park plan. It includes improved parking. Long-term, it would be paved. It includes one accessible parking space, a concrete sidewalk, which was part of our active transportation plan to have a concrete sidewalk all along Ocean Avenue here. So that would connect into that. The pathways, it says gravel, but it's compacted gravel. It's a cart pathway, the same type that are in Iroquois Park. That's what we've currently budgeted for. If we were looking for an asphalt or a concrete path, we would need to put more money towards it in the future. Just an aside from Brethour Park as a whole, council did refer the town's park master plans and park concept plans to this committee, which we weren't able to bring today. Obviously, it's a bit more involved, but something that would be helpful for staff would be to understand what some minimums are, or like what the desired like finishes of pathways, for example. Like, does the cart path, is it like, can you not get around Iroquois Park? That would be good to know. Because then, yeah, we will need to we'll just budget for asphalt moving forward, and that will be our new standard. Or if there's other examples of things that we should just be incorporating into all park designs in the future, that's something we can definitely do. So that will be coming in the future. So right now, we're just looking for feedback on Brethour Park. Again, it's the cart path pathways. It says gravel, but it's compacted gravel. It's more accessible than like a normal standard gravel pathway. Our standard in Sydney is 2 meters wide for concrete sidewalks or any sort of pathways. So that's how wide it would be. The benches, we do a combination of, and picnic tables as well. We have several locations where there's accessible picnic tables and benches with space beside them. So again, this is just a concept at this point in time. We will be working those into the detailed design as we actually start to build it. And then the first phase of this is the playground, and then widening the parking area. That will be gravel for the time being until we have more money to actually pave it in the next phase. We can't do that now because we also require a sewer connection, which has to go through the parking area for a future washroom installation. So to put the washroom in, we need to do the sewer connection first, and we just don't have the budget for it this year to do that. So it will be a gravel parking area for now, to be paved in the next couple of years. And then the pathways that lead to the playground are part of the first phase, as well as some picnic tables and benches. And then we did receive probably too many playground concepts to review in full, but we are looking for any general feedback you have on those concepts as well. There are a number of them. Some of them, part of the requirements in the RFP were to kind of fit within an area that we provided. It's supposed to be a small playground, fit within our budget, which was $130,000 for the playground equipment. And then also we did go out to a public survey, and the community ranked desired playground features. And so it was to incorporate as many of the top 10 ranked features as possible within that budget amount. So those are the options we have. We also did have a mention to not match Green Glade's new playground features, which some of them do. Some of them are very similar. So, I mean, we would look to try to avoid that. But yeah, we'd be open to hearing any feedback that you have on this.
Just a couple questions. For the playground, the surface, it's not clear on the drawings. What is it?
So it's a wood chip surface, engineered wood chips at this time. We did ask for, so there are 2 provisional items that we asked for pricing, which can be brought forward to Sidney's Council to determine if that's something they wanted to fund. So we do have including a rubberized surface as an option. So we have a budget item for that. The one option does look like it has a rubberized surface under a spinner element, but that's the only one. All the other ones are purely wood chip. And then the other provisional item was to include a shade element. So we do have pricing on a shade element. Again, that was something we heard out of the pandemic and various other areas. We've heard that shade elements in parks are a desired element. So we'll bring that forward as well to Sidney's Council, and they can decide whether or not that's something they would want to fund.
So just a couple of comments based on, we're always talking about learning and education. So we just opened our Green Glade playground yesterday. And with our playground, we have the rubberized surface, and then we also have wood chips. We have both. Our preference would have been to have full rubberized throughout the whole bottom of the playground, but we weren't successful in one of the grants. If possible, I think if you could consider the rubberized, it's much easier for any mobility or disability concerns. We do have kind of a transfer area built into our playground, but to have all wood chips, I think is a difficult piece. So that would be something that we would recommend. The other piece, I think shade is really important. We are looking at some shade pieces on our playground as well. With the whole climate piece and getting hotter, etc. I think it's really, really important. The last piece I would suggest is in the park area, and I know you had kind of mentioned, but places where families can gather and, picnic benches, but again, looking at shade. What we find, what we're seeing in Parks and Recreation trend is really the social component. And looking at different generations gathering while, kids can be playing on the playground or in the park. So if those kind of social little hubs in parks can be implemented, we're looking at that in our facilities. It's a huge piece, a huge moving trend, especially coming out of COVID. So those would be some of the recommendations that, I saw.
Dave?
I think everyone already knows, but just a comment from a cost perspective, a budgeting perspective, with new initiatives towards the accessibility of virtually everything, which is welcome. The cost per unit of a playground with equipment and so forth, based on a philosophy of providing a certain level of accessibility, is different, is higher than typically has been carried forward. So I'm sure your struggles of trying to make it work within the budget is admirable. The suggestion would be for the jurisdictions, for councils and that, to be aware of that. Perhaps it can be based on initially units that are worked out with those that have done similar facilities and have got certain levels, I guess, so that maybe the budgeting can better anticipate the actual costs that would come forward to be able to provide certain levels of accessibility. Equipment, for instance, you need certain equipment, certain portions of it that are truly accessible. The concepts don't necessarily reflect that, nor maybe should they. I think they should, based on that being a criteria, but then the budgets are challenging. So people are playing by the rules, playing by the cost parameters that are there, obviously. So you can't chastise those that are putting proposals in. But the end result may not be what everybody wants, what this group wants, what community wants either. So it's something that I think could maybe be brought forward initially so that you're not struggling as much with budgetary factors.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
David?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, and Anna, just a heads up for you, I've written out some notes and I'll send them to you, so you don't need to try to write like mad as I'm talking here. So these are comments in general, but also comments specific for the designs and that we were looking at here. First off, with the and this is I'm bringing this forward as sort of ways for looking forward, not trying to complain or anything. So please take it in that grain. The analysis that was done with the numbers-based, survey results in that. Just one comment on those is often they do not reflect the needs of minority groups just because they're minority groups. And I don't recall the survey. I don't know that I did the survey for this one, but I don't know if there was any actual accessible elements on the survey of the, looking for the ones that generated the most interest. But in general, you're not necessarily going to find, people supporting a wheelchair accessible swing when there's this really cool looking thing that's 6 stories tall with slides and elements like that as an alternative. So just when the engagement's happening, just to bear that in mind. So with the design itself, it's probably a relatively easy way for the municipalities to address playgrounds. Certainly, there's issues with capacity and with budgets and that, but the designs of a lot of these playgrounds are focused really on the play structures themselves, rather than a play environment. So in this case, there's a number of different options for structures. I can go to just about any park in the capital region and get similar structures to that, and especially when it comes to a number of the what they consider the accessible or inclusive elements. Like Just about every park now has a saucer swing, and things like that. One of the key pieces that's missing from our parks, especially out here on the peninsula, are elements that don't require someone to transfer from a mobility device. Like we've gone to, I think it's called Oak Ridge School on Cary Road, and they've got a we-go-round, which is a merry-go-round that's set into the ground in their playground, so that a person in a wheelchair can wheel on, and they can interact with people on it, because you can get about 3 or 4 people inside it, and then you get other people outside running like mad trying to spin this thing, and everyone's just having a great time. Another element, these are both from Habitat Systems, by the way. Another element is the they call it the WeGo swing, which is, if you remember those old swings that had the 2 benches that faced each other and you could swing back and forth and talk to your sweetheart or whatever. This is a modern version of that, where one side has a seat for someone to sit and the other side has a spot for a wheelchair to be brought in. You know, and I think of taking my son out someplace where he could do something and experience different motions and movements. But also, you know, a seniors couple that wants to go out and, like they used to date in high school, and sit on that swing and share a milkshake or something. You know, so these are sort of the things that I'm not seeing in our parks that I'd really like to start to see. Some of these elements that don't need us to lift. Like I noticed in the RFPs, the playgrounds were up to about age 12, some of them. My son's 10, and he can't use the accessible equipment in his own playground at the school at Keating Elementary. And this was just put in a few years ago, because he's too big and heavy to transfer from his wheelchair to the equipment. And he's not a big kid. He's small for his age. So just getting back to sort of the concept of the park, and this may be too late for this one. But if you look at a park like Gyro Park, just using that playground as an example, it's got a theme, and there's some play structures, but there's also play areas. It's kind of like a reef area where they've got rocks and logs. It's engineered wood fiber, which, you know, regardless what the manufacturers tell you and the playground companies tell you, it's not an accessible surface. And I've talked to the Rick Hansen Foundation about it last week, and they will not promote it as an accessible surface. But if you had something like that with either a rubber, pour in place rubber, or, you know, maybe a different theme, but you use the artificial turf. So you've got that impact attenuation if someone falls off a small rock or something. You know, I look at someone like my son, who could be in his power chair driving around these things like an obstacle course, while his friends are trying to keep away from him, jumping from rock to rock, you know, like the ground is lava. You know, so that creates a bit of a theme, and you're not relying on these big fancy structures, because, again, like I say, when I look at these structures, for someone that uses a mobility device, I really didn't see anything in there that they could use, apart from possibly the flat panel walls that they have sometimes at the bottom, where you've got a X's and O game or something like that. But, you know, when you take a look at the kids playing in the playgrounds, they don't use that very often. They're out there, they're active, they're climbing on things and running around. So, you know, having that space where they can do things, but don't have to be using the structure. So I'm just going through my notes here, and my apologies, I've been up all night on a ship, so I'm just trying to get through this here. When you're doing the pathways in the park, the gravel pathways, I'd like to hear Charlene's comments about the ones in Central Saanich, if you haven't had a chance to check them out. They're along Stelly's Crossroad, because they're a well-engineered path from what I could tell. They're multi-layer, compacted each layer with a nice hard surface on top with a very fine gravel that doesn't spread. It doesn't seem to get ruts from bicycles riding over it, but it does give you that pretty smooth surface, almost like concrete. So that's definitely a cost-effective way to go with the paths, and it helps to keep it a little more natural too. But as you're doing these paths, create some elements with, you know, a little bit of contour. You don't want big slopes, but have a bridge, have something, you know, like my son loves to go to the skateboard park, and we run him over the ramps and stuff with the wheelchair, you know, and you get a bunch of kids running around again and having those ups and downs and things, places to hide behind. When you're using the topography like that, I would suspect that it's much more durable as well than a playground structure. Some interactive elements would be nice to see, you know, sound, you know, for someone like, and sorry, Vanessa, I'm speaking for you here, but for someone that can't see, to be able to have the sounds and the kids being able to make music, being mindful of the neighbors. Budget considerations. Okay, I've talked about that one. Oh, one other thing in general for the park is allergens. So when working on the park and you're looking at the plantings in that, if you can use plantings that have a low opal score, that's the Ogden plant allergen score. Because a lot of people with environmental allergies, you know, reducing those elements can make the park more usable for them. But at the same time, if you can also find things that are aromatic, again, it's another element of the experience for the park. Guys, I'll leave it at that, and I'll send you my notes there, Anna.
Or do you want it?
A lot of, sure, thank you, Chair. And I think some of the similar comments have already been expressed, but I'll start with saying that I want to commend, I know North Saanich sort of went through a similar process when looking at how the surfacing was to be done, and recognize that there was a budget component to the change. I attended the opening at Jubilee Park, and it was it almost brought a tear to my eye to see how somebody that had mobility challenges was able to interact on that surface with their child or with their grandchild. And the joy, the sheer joy that was seen on that individual was pretty remarkable to see. And so I can't echo that enough from Lorraine's comment and David's comment that when you're looking at that surface material, to really take to heart that. And I'd be curious what the change in cost was from North Saanich perspective when you were looking at that. And I think it was around, it wasn't insignificant, but it was, no, I think it was around $70,000 or somewhere around there. So I would, potentially say maybe in some cases less is more when you're looking at the number of structures that you're trying to incorporate in order to offset that budget component. I am very cognizant of that. The comments around shading, I just got asked again about when we're looking at our master plan, a picnic shelter or something to be incorporated into that, to create that social hub. I love that terminology when you're looking at that. So how is that integrated into, can you sort of incorporate that into the playground as well as the park benches? I don't know. I would be curious if those diamonds are used at all by the community. It doesn't, as I haven't driven by there often, but I'd be curious how often they are used, and has that been considered?
Yes. So they weren't used for a very long time, and then during COVID, they started to be used a little bit. But it was part of our survey to confirm everyone was okay with removing the baseball diamonds. We did consider keeping one in, but it was too tight to have a baseball diamond and have play structure nearby. So we weren't able to retain any of them. So
My sister's house backs onto that property, so we watch it. There's quite often there's people throwing their balls for their dogs in that park. And riding their motorbike goes through the forested part. The motorbikes go through there quite often, which was a concern in the summer with the heat. But I know from my sister and her neighbors, they're kind of excited about the playground going in. They're looking forward to having having that stuff there and being able to play with it. As for the North Saanich Jubilee Park, I was thrilled with it. I was able to take my grandson and play with him. I was able to run around with him. It was, you know, again, my grandson wanted to push me into the wood fiber chips when I'd say, no, let's go back over to this side where I can play with you. But it was nice. There were options. Like I wasn't just stuck on the sideline watching him play. I could run with him and play with him. And we ran into another woman who had a toddler with her, and she was excited. She says, I can bring his brother now. He uses a wheelchair. And to me, I thought, ooh, we are making a difference with this. So again, kudos. And I know it was a substantial cost increase. I think it was an extra $90,000 to put the rubberized surface in. That was after the grant came in that they applied for and received. So very appreciative, and I thought there was lots of very positive feedback on that playground. So I go back to my same thing about this being a learning. We're not going to get everything all the time because of budgets and learning and stuff, but if we can do little parts and working towards it becoming, like, say, just part of the whole process of looking at that's part of the budgeting, and let's look at that realistically. So anyways, I appreciate the work, and I am excited about Brethour Park because that is one we'll use as a family. So when we talk about that social, the picnic social stuff, that would be thrilling. Yeah.
Sorry if I had a couple more things. Just,
Oh, I'm sorry, Gord. Yep.
that's okay if I may. And I appreciate, again, we talked about, and you mentioned it up, David, about sort of that collaboration and communication. And so the fact that Panorama was consulted with the fact to try and not create overlap and do that, I think that's great to see. The pathways that David mentioned, we just redid in Central Saanich Tanner Park. And so I'd be curious to see if that pathway system was similar. It's a compacted gravel, and I live literally right below it. And it seems to have held up quite well. I haven't used it from trying to push my dad in his wheelchair at all, but I do see lots of strollers that are being pushed along there. So yeah, one comment to staff about this would be just maybe try and curtail the number of options when you're presenting to Sidney. And I'd be curious if that was the direction from Sidney or not, but 12, they start to look repetitive after a while. Sorry?
So this was referred before the RFP closed, because the RFP closed last Wednesday, and the agenda for this was due on Thursday, and then we want to award in December so that it can be built by next spring. So unless we were to delay the award by probably a couple months, then like we could have in the future, we'll try to close our tender processes in a better time with respect to SPAAC meetings so that it just lines up better. But that's why it came, like, council was not aware that there was going to be 12. We weren't aware there was going to be 12 options. So yeah, but we didn't want to cut options without fully reviewing them in advance. So it was a tight turnaround to get this in. So, but yes, totally understand, totally agree.
And last was just with respect to sort of the perimeter of how the park is and the play structure area is being confined. The fixed rectangle one is less appealing to me, and having some sort of dynamic, less boxed in, and again, more to, again, maybe to David's comment about creating a play space as opposed to play structures, was just an observation. That was, and just again, touching on David's comments, a theme, you talk about Jubilee Park and sort of they've incorporated some airport component into it. This looks like it's been a cut and paste from a playground structure manufacturers, and just things have been put in to space as opposed to trying to look at maybe creating a theme, whether it's aquatic and nautical or marine environment, something that captures the essence of Sydney into something like this. Just again, an observation. But yeah, great. That's it.
Vanessa, did you want to say something? No? Okay. David?
Sorry, yeah, one comment that I wanted to make as well. For those of you that haven't heard of it before, there's an organization out of the States called Harper's Playground. And I'll send the link out to the group here, as well as the notes that I'll send the notes to you as well, Jen, if you like. You just have to accept they're pretty rough. But Harper's Playground was started by a dad with a child that was significantly disabled, like our son Nick, and looking at the playground structures that are very much like what we see these days, and how they just weren't there for his daughter. I think his daughter Harper, and out of this grew a concept of inclusive spaces with some incredible designs and communities coming together to build them. And these are the parks that do have themes. They've got like a mound that goes up with an accessible path that goes up it, and then a sort of the slide that goes down from the top, but there's a transfer space, all these sorts of things. But it takes these general playground structures and really kicks it up a notch to a park concept as opposed to just a structure concept. So I'll share that with the group.
Thanks, Dave. Anybody else? Terry?
Sure. So I'll just, gosh, every time I come here, I'll learn something new. Like I never would have thought about the type of plants and allergens for people. So thanks to David for that. I also like the idea of how can we incorporate play space rather than, not along with structures. So I'm just wondering whether it's too late to consider something outside of the rectangle, whether it could just be open space, like David says, with some boulders plopped down or something, some kind of topography there. So something like that, I think would be nice to see. I really like the idea of, as been mentioned by Lorraine, about like little social hubs, and like Gord said, maybe like a picnic shelter area, so people can get together. It's nice having just one picnic table, but be nice to have sort of like they have at Centennial Park, they have sort of a larger kind of picnic area covered, so groups can have a birthday party there or something like that would be nice to see. I like the idea of themed. I think that's a good idea as well. I guess what I'm wondering at this point is when I looked at the structures, I'm not an expert in them, but I think David kind of validated my comments that I didn't see anything, not too many things that would be accessible for a child that needs some accessibility, or for a grandparent wanting to get in there with their child. And so I hope it's not too late to add something in. So that would be, one of my recommendations is that we add something in, because it doesn't look, the way I understand the process is there was a bunch of a survey done and people asked to, which of these designs do they like, but it doesn't look like we incorporated any accessible designs in there for people to comment on, I think. And so that's what we went out for bid with based on these things. So I don't know how that complicates the whole process, but that would be one of my recommendations, is that we make sure that we have at least some consideration given to adding in some of the structures perhaps that David talked about. Yeah, I think that's all for me. Thanks.
Anybody else? Dave?
I guess in alignment with what Terry was suggesting, and this is nothing to do with the struggles of trying to put it forward within a budget and within the timelines and so forth. But my feeling is that it's not really there yet from a perspective of achieving the accessibility methodology, which obviously has an impact on everything I just mentioned about schedule and budget. And Chair, it's nothing to do with process to date. It's just an observation from my hat as a member of this group. Things, and it goes beyond any consideration for budget, but philosophically, the concept of the plan, given the lens of accessibility, leads me towards more of an organic approach to the area rather than rectangular. You tie it in with the pathways. It's an extension of a pathway. You can go wherever you want. You don't have to cross a boundary to get there. It becomes more obvious, more accessible. There's a better flow to it. Those that need the assistance find that it's a more automatic, there's no barriers, in other words, going through that. So it can flow. It lends you to developing those other ancillary spaces with covers and picnic areas and everything else. It becomes a whole concept design, whether it's done all at once or not. So that would be the starting point of my view of this, which I can certainly throw out knowing the implications of doing it. But in conjunction with that, the philosophy lends you and should the designers of the equipment to have experience in doing it, to have experience with accessible equipment, and to give you a solution that can be phased in potentially, but does reflect the concepts that David and others here are commenting on. Because I don't think it's there now. I think it really is a cookie cutter. Maybe given the timelines to a great degree that those that are proposing, and I've seen it, I probably have done some of that in my architectural days as well. But it's not a solution that has incorporated, I guess, elements to the degree that we see it happening in accessibility.
Yeah, I agree with David and Terry. In particular, when I first looked at the drawings, albeit last night, I certainly noticed the gravel pathway, but that's going to be problematic. But I can get my power chair through Iroquois Park, okay, but I'm not sure what a manual chair. And I was concerned that I didn't see any real accessible equipment or approaches, and I really like the comments that have come out today, mentioning that we really need a play space and not a playground, little rectangle thing with some structures on it. And we get such a lovely big space there at Brethour Park. It'd be a shame not to do it right just because we're focusing on timelines or budget restrictions or whatever. And I would definitely, even if you're going to do it, something now and then over time, make it better, improve it. I don't think you should sacrifice the surface for sure. You should go with rubberized, even if something else has to be added on, like the boulders and that sort of topography thing later on. But I really think that rubberized surface is essential.
Terry?
Yeah, so I'm just going to say, I think the difficult position staff are in, I think, is that, we had years ago, we did this Parks Master Plan. It came up with concepts of is going to be, and that was before we were so enlightened or have started. We're becoming more enlightened and focusing more on accessibility. And so, so I think maybe one of the things council might have to think about, I don't know, is, do we take a step back on this, as David says to, or Lee says, and David, about making sure you do it right. One thing I observed, like when I was at UBCM and the trade show, when I talked to a few companies that do accessible playthings, and I was surprised at there's a couple of them that didn't seem to have really fully understood like concepts. And so the Rick Hansen Foundation, they've got some guidelines there. they were adamant that engineered wood chips were a really good option. And anyways, and the other thing I found from them is that, yeah, they were very focused on the structures themselves rather than the design of the park. And so I think there's been some good points here about, and that'll be the opportunity. Staff have mentioned that this committee to look at that master plan at some time in the future. And so all of these things that we're talking about, staff will be aware of them. Okay, when we go forward again, we're going to have to consider this, that, and the other thing, and they can incorporate it into their budgets and bidding processes and stuff like that. So in terms of what happens next, as been said, it would be nice. It's a significant park in the community and will be the first one that we're trying to really incorporate accessible elements. So it would be nice to see these things incorporated if we can. And if that means that we have to, not proceed on the current timeline, I guess, well, that's a decision for council to make. So I'll just leave my comments at that.
So were you looking for SPAAC to give any kind of recommendation or anything back that you could take to council, or?
Suggestion, only hearing the conversation.
Thank you.
And I don't know if this is what council would like to hear, but just from the conversation, I was thinking perhaps the committee could pass a recommendation that additional accessibility structures and designs be considered for the park, and that a revised concept plan be referred back to SPAAC. But I don't know what's happening because I don't.
You're scaring Jen.
So I'm hearing what you're saying, and I just want to be clear. So I think I'm not a playground expert, I should say that, but I think the playground community uses inclusive play as their guideline, and that I guess that doesn't it doesn't necessarily mean like you must have an element specifically for someone who is in a wheelchair can play on, right? Like that's not inclusive play is for, like, there's many different levels of disability, right? And so it's looking at all of those and looking for, options that fit as many different needs as possible. Something that wasn't included in the package were actually all of them provided design drawings, and it actually shows, so all the playground designs provided design drawings. Many of them show where the accessible elements are in the playground design. So again, we didn't include this because it's just too much information, right? There's just too much, 12 options is too many. And not all the suppliers provided them in the same way. But there are this, I'm looking at option 2, for example, there's a number of elements here that they have the wheelchair symbol beside. So according to the playground manufacturer, there are some sort of elements there that someone with mobility challenges in a wheelchair should be able to use at those locations. And maybe you can't see it in the picture because it's something on the wall or something little. So I do want to clarify that is something that's incorporated into these designs, although you may not be able to see it in the pictures that we have, the renderings that you have. However, if we're hearing that, there needs to be a specific item for a child in a wheelchair to play on, then that's something we can definitely take back, and we can go and, maybe we report back to council and we would negotiate with whoever the preferred option is to incorporate an element like that into the design, into the playground concept. So if that is a specific ask, then that's something we can do. and I understand the play space with the so I guess there's a level of risk associated with like having boulders and rocks and different things in playgrounds. So that is something that different parks staff have different levels of comfort with. So that is a concern as well. Just when we're talking about adding, you know, natural features, there is a risk factor incorporated into that. And even like not having a border. I like that idea in theory, but for maintenance, it's very challenging to have no sort of definition between like a playground and the rest of the park. So, you know, there are maintenance elements that we need to work in as well. So we would take whatever, like if you do have a recommendation, that's great. If it is more specific, like we would like to make sure there's an element that a child who uses a wheelchair can use, then that is, you know, a very specific and like a large element, I guess, like a swing or one of the wheelie whirls. That is something we can take back and work towards. Going back to the drawing board, we can definitely do that as well, just like totally redesign the park. It'll just, staff have put a lot of work into this, I guess, for now, and we have this concept plan, and that's what we're working towards, and I understand it's not perfect. But yeah, it has a compounding effect, right? It just delays all future park projects. We're already pushing, we have a 20-year plan for park projects. We're already pushing everything out from like past this year, a year, because this project is already delayed, which is fine. It's just there's larger implications to any rework we do, which is okay. But if the request is specifically like, you know, rubberized surface, I hear that there's a strong desire for that. I guess in all parks moving forward. So you're right, we will be looking at smaller playgrounds in the future. With the rubberized surface, which is fine. You know, if that's the direction we're moving in, that's the direction we're moving. And shade elements, that's another thing. I guess just to clarify on that, we were looking at shade elements similar to North Saanich's park, which are not waterproof. So they're not like a picnic shelter. They're like a shade element. So they're a bit different than a picnic shelter like at Centennial Park. But when you have picnic shelters, especially in Sydney, where you know, there's a lot more of a transient population. We have concerns of people camping in them through the winter months. Again, we would, if there was a desire to put that in, we would make it happen, but there is that added risk when you do have like a picnic shelter, especially in an area like this it's not really that high traffic. It's not like a Tallista Park where there's constantly people driving by and like in the area all the time. So anyway, I would say that it would be helpful if we have like very specific recommendations, unless everyone acknowledges that this will have larger implications on like the whole Parks Master Plan rollout process, which again is fine. It's just challenging to make things happen, and yeah, it's easier to tweak what we have here rather than start from scratch. However, we can start from scratch if that's a desire. Corey?
Thank you. I'm only tangentially involved in parks infrastructure. But I guess what I heard was, and this is maybe a question for recreation experts or District North Saanich, it sounds like they've gone down this path, but it sounds like having a portion of the play structure oriented toward accessibility needs is desired. It also sounds like the rubberized surface is a huge cost. And Sydney quite often does parks improvements in phases. And I'm wondering if, you know, if there is sort of one part of this play structure that maybe not shown, but could be added, that could be cited in a way that, you know, going forward, when we do get the funds, that we could rubberize just the portion of ground around that and do like kind of a dual. So it is, you know, there is a portion of the play structure that's directly accessible from the pathway that is accessible with a rubber surface. There's still maybe a chip area as well that's closed off from the grass. And, you know, I don't know if that's common practice in parks like this, but yeah, I mean, there could be sort of a phased approach where, you know, when we do get the money for, you know, the play structure gets involved, when we do get the money for rubberized surface through a grant or other sources, that gets installed and connect to paved walkways, etc. So, and just a thought, my sense is that it doesn't necessarily need to be an all or nothing approach. It can be a little more phased and a little more nuanced. So,
Just for clarity on that, I think not just focusing on the child who needs to be in a wheelchair, but people that are accompanying the child, like a parent or a grandparent, they'd like access to the playground portion so they can play with their child. So that's doesn't lend itself to a piecemeal approach.
So my point on that is as somebody, when you've got, okay, we're gonna have one structure that a wheelchair child can play on, or there'd be one section. That's basically us saying to you, we're allowing you to play in this one spot. You're allowed to go here, or as a parent or grandparent, or a child in a chair who's there with his school mates. All your friends are going to be over there playing, but you can sit by and watch. And it's that element of exclusion that over the 40 years of having a child and a grandchild, is that I'd like to see us work towards the fact to say, no, if you want to go over there and play, you can go play with your friends. If you want to take your grandchildren to a park, you don't have to say to them, oh, you can't go play on that section because it's not safe because I can't get to you. So again, are we going to get it all the time? So again, work to some of it to it, but the overall concept in mind is saying, let's not purposely build places that exclude people. Let's work to be inclusive. And yes, there are design elements and topography and stuff that prohibit that within the parks master plans and stuff. But where it is possible, I think we should be trying to do it. I liked Sandy's recommendation that she kind of put forward. I kind of like that one. So that's Lorraine.
Thank you, Chair. I guess just to go back, is my question would be, what is the vision of that park? Because going back to Green Glade, our vision was we started leasing the school in a community center and had a very old, outdated playground. But the vision of that playground was not only to incorporate neighborhood and community, but we also had to build it. We have license programs. And when you have license programs, there's a lot of stipulations. So when we met with David and said, we want you in on this design, we want to hear your input. Some of the features that David's talking about, we didn't have an opportunity to do it at Green Glade because we were obligated in terms of licensing and space, because it's right next to our license outdoor preschool area. So there was different things we could work within that boundary. And the vision of that was to build a playground that incorporates our after school care program, our licensed preschool program, and also to invite the neighborhood in. So I guess I kind of go back, we have all these ideas, but what is the vision of that park and playground? Because in my mind, of course, I'm quite excited and passionate about all this, is that this is an incredible opportunity for the community to do the things that David's talking about, to set us apart from other playgrounds in all of the greater Victoria area. We weren't able to do that piece of equipment David suggests. We really wanted to, in terms of transferring someone from the chair onto a piece of equipment, because we had other stipulations we wanted to work with. But at the time when we talked to David, we said, well, there's an opportunity here because there's other playgrounds being built in the community, and hopefully we can build upon those and have different features that will be inclusive. So that's my question. What is the vision?
So it is a small neighborhood park. There's a total of 11 parking spaces available. We are not going to expand that, right? So it's intended to be a small neighborhood park. And you know, it's not a flagship park. I wouldn't say like a Talista or Iroquois where, you know, maybe those locations might be, should be expanded and to including other elements. But yeah, it's a small neighborhood park, really.
Or
Sure, I can appreciate both Jen and Terry wearing, you know, helmets on today and probably flak jackets as well. These are challenging conversations around some of the real broad topics, and it's difficult. And from my perspective, it's easy for me to say and spend city taxpayers' money as a North Central Saanich councillor. So it puts us into challenging positions. The comment you had about the actual components around the play structures are, there may be an element of accessibility to them, and they're highlighted by in their brochures about this has this component of accessibility or that component of accessibility. But the fact that an individual can't get to them on their own with the surface component renders it useless. And so I think you know, pardon the pun, but to start from the ground up when you're looking at how this is being designed so that people that are having these challenges can actually physically get there, either mobile, you know, aided with a pushing them or an individual on their own. But I think if you're looking at from that perspective and saying, okay, this is sure, this structure has an element of accessibility to it, but if they can't reach it, it's mute. So that would be my comment on that, is just how sure you're ticking a box, but is it actually feasible to be able to be used? And again, I am very cognizant of budget component to these things, and sympathetic to. I don't envy a Central Saanich coming here and with our parks master plan and all of that, to be frank. But do look forward to the comments and the discussion.
Vanessa, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, being visually impaired, going up to Parksville where they did that service, huge difference. I didn't realize, but I could get around way easier and find where I was, the perimeter, rather than jets.
As we hear the heavy sighs around, I think we all are cognizant, and I mean, this is huge for me, sitting through all this is the exorbitant cost of all of this stuff. It is a lot of money, and there is only so much money to go around. But I think if we can look at it, again, and we're kind of going back to me, in my mind, to the accessibility plan, is there's cost involved, but there's less cost involved if we think about it and do it from the ground up, rather than think about adding or changing as we go along. So I think as we develop the way of thinking, is that we don't even think about this unless we've already looked at where's the accessibility lens into this. So yeah, I appreciate that this is a struggle and there's timeframes, but hopefully we can find a way forward. Yeah, Terry?
Yeah, so just a couple comments. So, you know, I'm thinking about Corey's comment about, you know, is there a way that we can do it in a phased way? So are there things that we could, you know, specific things to say, we want these elements incorporated. So it sounds like we want rubberized surface. We want sort of more, not just a play structure, but a play area with topography and stuff. You know, some of these things that we've brought up, and then providing that specific direction, and then also with maybe staff based on that can say, okay, well, maybe we can't do that all at once, but we could do this year. And then we could incorporate this next year. I don't know if that's kind of doable. And I guess the other thing I'm thinking about in terms of, yeah, it's not necessarily like one of our, like you say, our flagship parks. However, in Sydney, you know, so we've got Rathdown Park, which is okay, but it's engineered wood chips, so it's not really accessible.
Cognizant. I'm also cognizant of the processes and that are involved. You know, one thing that might be helpful next time is if SPAAC is brought in at the development of the concept stage for a site, as opposed to sort of at this later stage, just looking at primarily at a particular element. But I'm happy to leave it to the minds around the table there on the direction to go.
Okay, Gord.
Sure, and I guess we're back to sort of the idea, and I can appreciate that when this came forward, staff was sort of looking for a design approval from what was presented here, and I don't think SPAAC, from my perspective, is prepared to sort of come forward with a specific recommendation on this. So is there, I guess, something that, and maybe to Sandy's point about a bit more of an overarching guide that would help staff from this perspective to try and, I can appreciate that you're under some timeframes to try and get some of this done. And so is there something within that motion that you can take back and work with in a reasonable time frame to look to incorporate? I can, again, understand that council is ultimately the decision maker on this. And, you know, I think the discussion around the table has been fairly consistent around where the accessibility side of it needs to be. So I didn't know, again, if that motion is sufficient that we can move forward on this. Yeah. Not to supersede chair on anything.
No, chair appreciates this.
So basically, the motion is that that council consider additional accessibility structures and design and bring a revised plan forward. And I don't know if staff want to include, that's why I said if it wanted to include some specifics or not. But it seems like to me that they're kind of not satisfied with the plan at this time to affect accessibility features.
Eric, question for the membership. If stepping back for a moment and taking a look at the overall concept plan as it relates to the implementation for the angled parking off of Ocean Avenue, the location of the washroom, the trail network, the multi-sport court, etc. When you look at it as a holistic plan, is the committee satisfied with the overarching design, but looking for specific elements perhaps associated with the picnic area and the playground for improved accessible areas? With that, because a direction like that indicating to council the overarching plan is desirable. However, additional elements, using your language, additional elements associated with accessibility specifically related to the picnic area and tables and playground should be considered. Something along those lines. That then would give you some clear, give council some clear direction from the committee as to the acceptability of the overall plan, and also allow you to proceed with the, I mean, you've got to do plumbing, you've got to do drainage, you've got to do, there's all of those elements to this park design that would allow you to proceed with the fundamentals of the park, the rain garden installation, your stormwater management, all of those features without and then possibly revisiting the specifics of the central area of the park. Is that, so I'm asking the question of the committee, is that where your heads are at, or is this whole networking, trail network, et cetera, unacceptable to the committee?
In my opinion, I look at the park, and I do know that park because I do look at it all the time. I like this, that we're going to put these things in. It's just that I can't get to any of them at this stage. So yeah, like I said, when you look at the overall, the putting in the plumbing, everything else you have to do to get it there. But then how do we go from there to make it Except, yeah, Jen.
Sorry, what do you mean you can't get, like, when you look at the ultimate plan, what?
Well, I look at where the picnic tables are, so how do I get off the path to the picnic tables? How do I get off the path to the sports court? How do I get off the path to the play area? You know, is there, how do I interact with anybody that's playing in that park? Because by the way I see this, and again, I'm not a design person, I'm not an architect, I look at this and think, oh, well, they've got all these things, but you got to get to them first. So it goes back to what Lee said. It's great, you've got a little thing on the playground that somebody in a wheelchair can play with, but if they can't get to it, doesn't count. So on that aspect, but I think, oh, look, I like that there's a sports court that I can maybe get to and play tennis with my grandson. There's a picnic area, but I can't actually get to the picnic table because it's bark mulch or grass or whatever that I can't wheel myself to it. But I like all the elements that are there if I could access them. So again, I don't know if that goes to what you're saying, Trevor.
Yeah, like what I'm asking for consideration, I guess, and jump into. But if I'm the one in charge of this plan, significant effort went into the overall development of this particular. When you look at it at the 10,000 foot mark, into this overarching plan of where the multi-sport court's going to be located, where the playground's located, where the rain garden is, how the parking is going to integrate, and where the washroom location is. So is that acceptable to the committee conceptually? That's question one. And then if elements of that, you just indicated access to features within the park, if those need additional design work to achieve better accessibility or achieve accessibility, then that's the type of recommendation that you could forward to council. And then possibly have that revised and enhanced design returned for additional comment to the committee or however that, or council can just can take that feedback and then give direction to staff indicating, please implement additional accessible considerations when moving forward with the award of the RFP. Because there are timelines here that I'm hearing, and I'm sensitive to them as well with my work. That in order to keep something moving, if you're accepting the overarching concept, then the engineering side of it and the implementation side of a lot of these pathways, et cetera, can be done. But perhaps additional design work needs to be focused on the playground and the picnic area. Picking those two for a moment, because it appears that you could. Being mobility challenged, access the multi-sport court because it's directly connected to the pathway at this point. So you're 1 for 3.
I just want to clarify, there will be a connection into the playground as well. That it's just not shown on this very high level concept sketch. And the picnic area, we can, if that's a desire, it increases the amount of hard surface in a park, which is that's fine, and we'll just make sure that they're accessible, like make sure that there's pathways to them, and we can do that. But yeah.
So that's the type of recommendation for, like, yes, it's achievable, but if the committee wants to then give their recommendation to council, they can be specific about that, and then that also then consists. Council can then give direction consistent with SPAAC's recommendation. Please enhance the design to incorporate accessible features within the picnic area and the playground. Then staff can start to implement that and negotiate that with the providers as required.
Terry?
So what I was just going to say in regards to the motion, I think it needs to be more specific. Okay, and so this, to help move things along, what I would say is, I think you said accessibility features, and I would say such as a play structure to accommodate a wheelchair, a rubberized surface for the play area, ways to improve access to all areas such as the playground, picnic area, and multi-sport court, and maybe it's already going to be, and that an open play space, an open accessible play space, and a covered picnic shelter. Those are the specific things that I heard. So if anybody else wants to pop up and say, was there anything else?
Great, would you mind just repeating those again?
Oh, God.
I know sometimes.
Okay, so, and anybody else pipe in if this wording needs to be tweaked, but I would say what I heard was a play structure to accommodate a wheelchair, a rubberized surface for the play area, and picnic area. Ways to improve access to all areas like playground, picnic area, multi-sport court, to have a covered picnic shelter, and to have an open, accessible play space.
Sorry, and
Okay.
your motion, I think you wanted the picnic area to be rubberized?
Well,
Or does that
Or-
not necessarily need to be? That seems
or maybe,
excessive.
or just, okay, take that out and just add it, maybe.
Just so that it's an
So that's-
accessible area.
That's an accessible area, yeah, yeah. So I'll move that.
Seconder,
I'll second for discussion.
second for discussion.
The one thing that I was, I guess this is a question for Trevor. With the washroom location, I'm just curious, is there a reason why it's in that corner, or thinking of parents with maybe multiple kids having one go run to the washroom while they're at the playground or having a picnic? Would there not, has consideration been given to putting it somewhere between the multi-sport court and the picnic area? A little bit, maybe a little more central location for the facilities that are there.
As this is Sydney's plan.
Oh, sorry, wrong municipality.
It's all good.
We do have a water service at this particular location where the washroom is now. However, we could look at moving it closer, like more central in the park. In the future, the sewer connection is going to actually be coming from EPCO, so that would work out better for our sewer connection potentially. We wouldn't want to have it in a location where it's in the way of things, I guess. But yeah, we could consider that.
Thanks.
Do you want us to incorporate that into the recommendation to consider a more, okay, and to add in and to consider a more central location for washroom facilities?
I will add, we do want to keep it near the road again for septet issues. We don't want people camping in the washrooms if they're set back in the park. So we do want to keep it right by the road, but we can move it more in the middle of the park, I'm sure.
Word?
Sure. Quickly to Central Saanich staff with respect to this and the comments around concerns about people using and overnighting in the facilities. Do we seem to have issues with that in Centennial Park?
I would say no. We have had the model in the past of a caretaker living on site, and we are slowly moving away from that operational model. So we do have support, obviously, with police as needed. I would say the after-hours issues so far for Central Saanich that I have heard are not related to camping or encampments, but rather kind of graffiti and vandalism and those types of things seem to be more the issues that we've had in that location.
So one question I have, I do know there has been on occasion in that wooded area, there are people that do camp in there. Be a nice washroom facility for them, right? So I know that probably is an issue then because we are aware of people that are there.
I do note as well for the community's consideration that with the trail, multimodal trail that runs around the airport, having the washroom in that location is desirable because it can then service everyone utilizing that trail because it's right at the crosswalk.
Oh, good idea. Yeah.
So, so if you, and even for residents coming, like if they're choosing to access that trail or like navigate, if you're coming in from Red Wing and going and moving through the park, you're passing right past the bathroom door, essentially. Plus, if you are in the neighborhood and you're having 3 kids, it's always the last thing when you're loading the van. So as much as, David, your point's well taken, it's also when you're leaving the park and did you go or not? And therefore it's accessible to the parking spaces. So some additional feedback.
That was a consideration, putting it close to the trail, but we may be able to cost share potentially with VAA. That's the desire. Maybe we'll. That's in like the 20-year plan, though. It's the washroom's not a near-term element here, but yeah, that was definitely a consideration for the washroom location. But
Lorraine?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add too, I mean, not that it would take away from the overnight camping, but once the park built, it's starting to use that element of homelessness and people hanging it around, it does go away. And I know because my son's a police officer in the city of Victoria. But I think it's a case, you get the park built, you get families coming, it's active with community, I think. So.
Sure, and then through you, Chair, just to staff and to follow up on the comment about that 10,000 or 30,000 foot view, that path that carries on to the south that sort of heads towards the wooded area, is that connecting into something existing already? Like it just wasn't part of that component. So how do we, is that a path that goes to nowhere, or?
no, there are existing trails through the forested area as well. They do require some upgrades in the future, but it's not part of our current plan to do that. So yeah, that connects into an existing path.
Okay. Gotcha.
Sorry, just related to people camping out, we do have, Sidney is a bit different than like Central Saanich, the location of Centennial Park, where we do have a number of people who live around the downtown. We've had issues with people camping in Paul Park bathrooms, and that's a pretty heavily used park. We have people camping around that building, and also Tawista Park at the Artsy building. There's been issues with people camping there. So it is more of a concern for Sidney than maybe Central Saanich and North Saanich for sure. I'm sure you get people in the bush, but there's more services around Sidney for people. So not quite the same context, but it's noted.
And at the town hall.
And at the town hall, yes.
And one final comment from me before I have to run is I'm always reminded of the presenter that sort of mentioned when we first started this committee, benches make great benchmarks. And so where the benches are placed within your park is sort of important. And so if there's opportunity to sort of maybe spread those out, and again, that's probably getting way into the granular minutia of this, but just an observation more than anything.
So can I say then that we could go with Terry moved that motion, whether we could proceed with this, because I kind of like to get to the
need a seconder?
Yeah.
The seconder's been made, so you have to call it.
Okay.
Seconder?
David.
Okay, so I guess, do we call this for a vote then?
Yes.
Everybody who agrees with the recommendation? Yes, you agree? Yeah. Okay, I think that's unanimous, so that's what we'll move, and we'll move on to the next one. I kind of like to do this for you before you have to take off, because it affects Central Saanich. It's the recommendation that came forward from Central Saanich on their funding grant. So did you want to speak to that, Emily?
Absolutely, thank you, Chair. So Central Saanich Council did endorse the accessibility plan. There is $25,000 up to available through SPARC BC, which is administering the grant on behalf of the province. In order to access that money, as the other chair, Mr. Willows, indicated, we are one of the first ones to kind of come out the gate with our accessibility plans. So in order to help the district implement it, council endorsed that we could apply for the grant for item number 2, so training and awareness or education, as well as meetings. So staff have already started booking our trainers and working on our learning and development for staff at various levels, depending on where in the organization they are, as well as looking at some options for increasing the accessibility, I would say, of our meeting room so that it can be used for other groups as opposed to just council meetings. One of the requirements of the grant is that our accessibility committee also endorse the application. So that is why it's here for you.
Anybody have any comments on it? No?
So do you need a motion from the committee to?
Yes.
Okay. Want to make that
I'll
motion?
make the motion that's been provided us that the Saanich Peninsula Accessibility Advisory Committee endorse District of Central Saanich staff to apply for the SPARC BC grant program for up to 25,000 to assist in the meeting implication of recommendation number 2, which entails training and awareness, and recommendation number 17 for meetings.
Second,
Second, carried. All in favor?
just one comment. I guess it's awesome. I guess I'm thinking this is one of those things, collaboration maybe between municipalities.
Exact same.
Like if Central Saanich has kind of started to move ahead on that, and when I was looking at our plan, if I was asked, I would think that would be like the number one thing I would recommend to focus on. So I guess I guess I can't really make that recommendation here back to Sidney Council, but I guess I'm just putting it out there to staff as a possible thing to look at, I guess, to collaborate with Central Saanich.
Yeah, and I would say that the $25,000, there are quite a few things that that Sidney or North Saanich could apply for. So perhaps rubberized playground surfaces, I don't know. But I would say as well with a lot of our training, particularly with emergency services generally, but overall, if we have extra seats, if we've purchased a trainer, we will put the call out. If we're developing the curriculum or have the contact through, of course, happy to share that as well.
Would it be appropriate to make a motion arising for me to recommend that Sidney staff consider looking at what Central Saanich is doing in terms of training and look at potential opportunities for collaboration? Like, do you think that direction is helpful or needed, or?
Council.
Well, yeah. If you say no, or is it something that you would do anyways?
So I'm not sure if you remember back in July, Sidney did bring a few options forward for this grant as well, but it's
Oh, I wasn't, sorry. So I wasn't necessarily saying that that's what we would use the grant for, because I remember we had some, I was just saying, I think it would be a good idea to direct staff to look at what Central Saanich and see if there's opportunities for sharing or collaboration.
Happy to have that conversation.
Okay, should I make a motion?
It's already one.
Oh, no. Okay, well, let's deal with this one and then we'll talk about motion arising.
If we again voted all in favor of the recommendation, I think we.
Haven't voted yet.
Oh, Trevor had a question.
You haven't called the question yet, so.
Yeah, I don't think you voted on that.
So everybody in favor of it, of the recommendation? Yeah. So it passes.
And I'll make a motion arising just that Sidney Council that the committee.
You dropped again.
David, did you lose them too?
Yep.
Okay.
I'll let Terry know.
Okay.
I guess we'll look back.
I've been emailing Anna every time it drops, so.
Oh, okay. We'll get them between the two of us.
Yeah, sounds good.